Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday morning, and on Sunday mornings especially, I always wake up the philosopher. That's before my daily routine and all the things that we're going to do during the day and what's going on in the world and everything else is concerned. When I have to start thinking about what I'll be doing today. So, here's what I was thinking this morning. You know, we're all born ourselves. And our early years are raised by our parents. And we, to some degree, become what we were born to be and how we were raised to be. But there's another thing that figures in. We're also formed by our friends. They're the ones that in some cases we look up to, some we look down on, and they become non-friends. But I have had a friend over the years who was in his 60s when I was 30. I'm now 84, so he's been gone a long time. He was a great storyteller, and there was a lot of stories told about him. He was born and raised here in Gloucester County, down in Guinea. The Guineamen, as we call them, came to America as indentured servants. The ship they were on run aground on the mud flats of what is now called Wolf Trap. The name of the ship was Wolf, and that's where the name came from. Well, the Guineamen all went swimming ashore, and they wound up on Big Island in Gloucester County. And they lived there for generations, and up in the marshes of Gloucester. And they owed a debt, so they kind of hid there. They really didn't come out of Guinea any more than they had to, except to get the things that they had to get. The police didn't go down there much because the sheriff's department, I guess you would say, they didn't go down there much because they had a reputation of being centered around themselves, and you don't really want to have to go down in there and where somebody might shoot you. They have a reputation for that too. But anyway, I worked with Malvin. He was part owner in the business that I became a part owner in later. He was tool crib attendant, basically, was what he did. He handed out tools, and he remembered who had what, who got it, and when they got it. So he had a great mind that way. One of his favorite stories was that there was a guy pulled up in front of the store in his pickup truck, and some other guy who was mad at him for whatever reason come running up there in front of him and told him that he says, "You're not leaving, you're going to stay here." Well, the guy says, "You don't tell me when I can leave and when I can't." And the fellow says, "Well, you're not leaving." He said, "I'm going to stand right here in front of you and stop you." He said, "If you stand in front of me, I'm going to run over you." And the other guy says, "Well, go ahead." So he did. Ran over him and killed him. Well, it was kind of unusual to have a court trial over anything that went on in Guinea, but they did. And the judge said that anybody that stands in front of a truck and tells somebody to run over him is committing suicide. So the guy was found to have committed suicide. The guy driving the truck went scot-free. Anyway, Malvin was in World War II. They put him in charge of a ship because he could run a 40-foot workboat. And that's the way most of those guys that went into the merchant marine got their commission. They had experience running and working boats. Well, the story was told that, for one thing, they came in to the Mississippi River, down there at the mouth of the river, and they brought the boat up to the dock, and Malvin had just started, and he was a deckhand. And the guy on the pier was directing them to come into the dock, and this guy up in the bridge had the window open, was listening. The guy was giving directions from the dock. And the guy on the bridge, the helmsman, couldn't understand what he said. He said, "I can't hear him. What did he say?" Malvin said, "Come full ahead." The guy opened the throttle and bang, they hit the dock, tore the dock all to pieces, tore half the bow off the boat. And of course it all went to court. And Malvin had to go to court, and he told him what happened. He said, "Well," he said, "that's what I heard." And so nothing came of it. Anyway, a little later on, they needed to run ships, convoys, to Hawaii after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And nobody knew any celestial navigation. They didn't know how to navigate. They were all operators of small boats, fishing boats, little tugboats and stuff like that. And none of them ever had to go out of the river or out of the bay. And so somehow or another, Malvin Rowe and his ship became the leader of the pack, so to speak. So they sailed out as far as they needed to go to get to Hawaii, based on the speed they ran and the number of miles they ran per day and all of that. And so then they went around in a big circle, ever-tightening circle, until they found Hawaii. They had no idea where they were, other than that they were somewhere in the vicinity of Hawaii. Well, my understanding was that, well, the story he told actually was that on the way back, it was told by others, a couple who sailed with him, I think, that Malvin had two guys on the ship who absolutely refused to follow orders. He gave them orders to do something and they totally refused. And he told them, he said, I will hold a court right here in this pilot house, and we will find you guilty of mutiny. So they did. Then it was up to Malvin. Now what am I going to do? They didn't have a jail on the ship or any place to lock somebody up. So they decided to hang him. They took him up the mast on the boat. And there was a yard arm up there. And they hung him from the yard arm. Well, then they had to figure out what to do with the bodies. They didn't have any refrigeration on the boat back in them days. And they decided, they first thought to throw them overboard, but they had a whole fleet of ships behind them, and they said it'll draw sharks. If somebody falls off one of them ships, you'll be eaten. So they threw them in the furnace. Well, that was just one of the stories that other people told on Malvin Rowe. But Malvin was a good friend to me. I was wanting to sail to Bermuda, and I didn't have a sextant, and I didn't know how to navigate yet. And he gave me some pointers on navigation, and he said, I can get you a sextant. I said, all right. Here, lo and behold, in about a week's time, here comes a sextant. He brought it in. He said, how will this one do? Well, of course it would do. It was a World War II Navy sextant. And I said, oh man, that is the cat's whiskers. That's no toy sailboat sextant. That's a real Navy sextant. And he said, yeah. He said, the guy that got it for me, I got to give him something. Forget it. He said, how about $50? Can you pay $50 for it? I said, sure, Malvin. That's great. That sextant is worth 10 times that. And he said, no. He said, just give me the $50 so I can give him $50 because he had to go aboard a ship out there in the James River where the steel fleet is anchored and steal the damn thing. Oh, so well, all right. So I give him $50, and I took my sextant home. Took some courses, or took a course in celestial navigation. Didn't understand a damn word the guy said. So after the course was over, I must have learned something. But as the course was over, I started studying it on my own and trying to figure it out. Well, on my first trip, I knew two things. I knew that at noon the sun was high overhead. So, and sometime early in the morning, I could get a longitude fix, how far east I had traveled. And at noon, I could get a latitude by knowing by the tables at what point the sun passed across the meridian, and my sextant would tell me that. Would tell me at the highest point of the sun at noon. It was lower before noon, and it began going lower after noon, so I knew when noon was. Well, that was the only thing I knew about how to navigate. But you know, the biggest, most important thing I learned was that navigation, celestial navigation, doesn't really tell you where you are. It tells you how far you are from where you thought you were. You keep track of your the speed you're making, the distance you're running, maybe how much the cross currents are pushing your boat north or south or whatever direction. It also tells you how much your boat slips sideways if you're beaten to windward. And you take all of that into account and you come up with a dead reckoning point. That's what it's called, dead reckoning. And so then you shoot your sun sight or your star sight at night if that's when you're doing it. And that tells you how far you are from where you thought you were, which seems pretty odd, but that's the way it works. And so anyway, due to Malvin Rowe, I learned to navigate and used celestial navigation in a couple of trips I made in the Atlantic Ocean. So he was a good friend of me. But he was an ornery scoundrel, too. And, but I had great respect for him. I really did. I knew when Malvin told me something, he said, you know, I knew that when he told me something, it would be so. I could go to the bank with it. And I also knew that if somebody come there to the shop and decided they wanted to kill me, Malvin Rowe had a shotgun behind his desk and it would come out in all its glory. So there's people you trust and people you never get a chance to trust, and there's people you just don't trust. And I think I'm a pretty good judge of who they are, and and what they think and how they make themselves trustworthy or not trustworthy. And so anyway, that's a story of one of my friends that I think had a huge bearing on my life, because in fact in fact his orneriness was part of what made me who I am. I'm not claiming to be ornery, but you know, I don't know, that's another story. My wife might have to tell that story. Anyway, okay folks, that's the end of this yarn. And y'all have a good day. Enjoy your Sunday. And I'll be back.